Stella says writing will help. Her patient, our narrator, whose name is only revealed later as the person addressed in the opening, so Harry, here goes, is reluctant. She insists she has nothing to recover from, though Stella, her therapist, disagrees. Stella encourages her to write a letter to herself, to a friend, to anyone she trusts. The act, she says, will help her confront what happened that night, the night of the business with the knife. But the narrator resists clarity. Facts, she insists, are not truth. They cannot capture what it felt like or why she did what she did. Even in remembering, her mind fractures. She cannot recall the sequence of events. Did she drop the knife on the counter, the floor? Did she wash it or leave it sticky? Each recollection mutates, splintering into alternate versions. She knows something irrevocable occurred, yet her memory slides through variations: blood, chocolate, a broken glass, a puddle of red on the floor. It's impossible to distinguish between cake batter and blood, dinner and disaster, before and after. Her recovery, or her refusal of it, begins with a letter and a confession that circles the void of an unspeakable act. The dinner party. It begins, she decides, a week earlier with a conversation on a Friday night. She's sitting with her partner, Andrew, in their living room. He's buried in screens, MacBook, iPad, iPhone, working on his emails while she half watches The Crown and half drinks a bottle of Merlot. She's unemployed and unmotivated, scribbling half-heartedly in a moleskine notebook. Andrew announces that he and his business partner, Evan, are about to finish their latest project. He wants to celebrate with a dinner party. Thursday, before the official launch, just the three of them plus Gerald, an elderly consultant Andrew complains about constantly. She listens absently, nodding the irony. Andrew, newly rich after selling his company, could easily afford a caterer, but he insists she cook for the personal touch. Never mind that she's vegetarian and that Gerald, the dinosaur, likes braised rabbit. Andrew tells her to make it anyway. You don't have to eat it. There will be a starter, the rabbit, and a chocolate cake, Evan's favorite. The narrator, still in the passive orbit of Andrew's self-assurance, agrees. As he kisses her and returns to his computer, she sits frozen beneath the weight of the cat he gave her, his latest gesture of affection. The animal, serene and self-possessed, finds comfort easily in this house. She cannot. The cat's purring irritates her as much as it consoles her. It highlights her own unease, the disquiet that has settled in every corner of her life with Andrew. As the television glows cold blue from Andrew's new 65-inch screen, she thinks about how little of herself remains. Once, she had read constantly, imagined stories, written them. Now she only watches, as if her own life is something playing out in front of her. How it began. Their story began years earlier in Utrecht. She met Andrew at the library. She was 23, a literature student. He was 29, working on a startup project with a friend. Their first conversation was a flirtation between intellect and attraction. She mocked him gently when he told her his app was designed to help users block time-wasting apps. He laughed, self-aware, charming in the way only men of privilege can be. They walked out together into the soft Dutch sunlight. She noticed the canal, the smell of water, and thought fleetingly of another man, Harry, the one she's addressing in her letter now. There's a ghost of an earlier relationship there, unspoken but palpable, a memory of tenderness and loss that shadows her as she meets Andrew. Andrew was British, wealthy, self-assured in a way that both drew and repelled her. His family had money, houses in London and Cambridge. He wanted to study astrophysics, but he said hadn't the balls. Instead, he'd studied computer science, a practical compromise his parents approved of. She in turn shared fragments of her own past: a distant mother, a dead father, a house that had once been full of stories but had gone cold and silent. She told him about the silence that followed her father's death, how she filled it with imagined worlds, scenes of danger and survival, of being lost in the woods at night, of fear transformed into comfort. Andrew listened with the polite attentiveness of a man unused to suffering, yet his awkward sympathy touched her. When he misinterpreted her story about Paul, her mother's new husband, as a child, she laughed, delighted by his discomfort. The attraction between them grew quickly. She saw in him what she'd always envied: composure, privilege, the illusion of control. To be near him was to feel steadied, anchored. Her own rootlessness, her mother's departure to Berlin, her friend Harry's sudden move to Cambridge had left her unmoored. Andrew's attention filled that void. By the end of their first date, she was already imagining herself in his life. When he invited her to his place that night, she accepted without hesitation. The relationship. Their early months together shimmered with glamour and relief. Andrew was attentive, generous, and she mistook his confidence for love. Yet even then there were signs: his self-absorption, his subtle control, his blindness to her discomfort. He liked her best when she reflected his world back to him, when she was the quiet woman who listened, smiled, and said bloody in that charming way that made him laugh. She adapted, as she always had. She became what he wanted, a mirror polished smooth. Over time, her writing faded. Her world shrank to the size of his apartment, his routines, his expectations. She learned to read his moods, to anticipate the turn of his sentences. He filled silence with his own opinions, she filled hers with absence. When he bought the cat a gift, he said, to keep her company. She understood it as both affection and dismissal. He didn't need to accompany her, the cat would do, and she accepted it, she always did. The night of the knife. By the time of the dinner party, years later, her relationship with Andrew had calcified into routine and resentment. She was no longer the bright, witty woman he'd met in the library. She was quieter now, more brittle, more detached. Still, she planned the dinner. She shopped, prepped, cooked. She handled the rabbit meat though it repulsed her, made the chocolate cake though she no longer liked sweets. The guests, Evan and Gerald, arrived, bringing with them laughter, condescension, and alcohol. The evening unfolded as such nights do, polite conversation slipping toward argument, laughter turning sharp. Gerald, the pompous academic, pontificated about literature and canons. Evan grew loud and slurred, Andrew arrogant. The narrator drifted between kitchen and table, unseen and indispensable, servant to the spectacle. Somewhere between the main course and dessert. Something broke, perhaps a glass, perhaps her restraint, perhaps both. There was shouting, a flash of violence, a knife, a hand, hers sticky and trembling, a puddle on the floor, blood or chocolate or both, she doesn't remember. The aftermath is a blur, a crime perhaps, an accident perhaps, someone bleeding, someone leaving. The next day, or was it that night? She was with Stella, the therapist, told she was in recovery. Recovery from what remains undefined, unspeakable. Memory and fragmentation. The story she writes is as much about remembering as it is about denial. Her recollections slip like water through her fingers. Each version contradicts the last. She dropped the knife, she cleaned it, she hid it, she never touched it. She revisits small, tactile moments, the texture of the cake batter, the warmth of the cat, the gleam of Andrew's screen, the smell of wet forest, and tries to piece together what they mean. But the closer she gets, the more the truth dissolves. Her narrative itself mimics trauma, cyclical, recursive, obsessive. Every detail morphs into metaphor. The puddle of blood becomes the spilled chocolate mixture, the knife becomes a symbol of guilt and release. In one version, she's cleaning. In another, she's destroying evidence. In another still, nothing happened at all. Each recollection is both confession and deflection, as if writing could undo what has been done. Love and loss. Threaded through this chaos is the ghost of Harry. He's the one she addresses directly, the you who haunts every page. Harry was her past, perhaps her first love, perhaps the truest one. When he left for Cambridge, he did so with finality, leaving her bereft. She sought Andrew in the hollow that followed Harry's departure, hoping wealth and confidence could replace tenderness. But Andrew was never Harry. He was a performance of safety, not its reality. His world of apps and ambition, of OLED screens and expensive wine, was sterile. She mistook it for love until it suffocated her. By the end, her letter to Harry becomes a plea for understanding, for witness. She is not asking forgiveness but acknowledgement that someone see her as she truly is, fractured and uncertain, not as Stella's patient or Andrew's partner. The meaning of Mise en place. The title, Mise en place, the French culinary term meaning everything in its place, becomes ironic. In cooking, it refers to preparing ingredients before the act begins. In her life, it reflects an impossible wish that everything could be ordered, measured, controlled. But her life refuses such order. Every place is disarranged, her home, her memory, herself. The kitchen where the story begins and ends is both domestic and dangerous, a space of creation and destruction. The knife is both tool and weapon. The act of preparation becomes indistinguishable from the act of violence. By writing, she attempts her own Mise en place of memory, to lay out the ingredients of her past and examine them one by one. But each time she touches one, it changes shape. The ending. She ends where she began, in uncertainty. Stella insists that what matters is not the truth of what happened but what she does with it, how she lets it shape the rest of her life. The narrator resists but continues writing, knowing that every sentence brings her closer to an understanding she both dreads and desires. She cannot reconstruct that night fully. She cannot separate guilt from grief or love from fear. But but she can write, and in writing she begins to reclaim her voice. The letter closes not with resolution, but with an acknowledgement of ambiguity. The past is what it is, Stella says, the important thing is what we make of it. And perhaps that is what recovery truly means, not remembering perfectly, but learning to live with what can't be remembered at all.